Hello teachers, thanks for joining me today as we talk about how to teach the Beethoven Écossaise in G major without Opus 23. This is an early intermediate piece that a lot of students enjoy playing. It shows up in many collections that you might be using with your students. I grabbed a couple that were on my shelf. This is in the Bastion Piano Literature Volume 1. It's in the old Francis Clark Piano Literature Volume 2. It's in Masterworks Classics. It's in many more. And if you click the link below in the description of this video, you'll get a PDF that has more collections listed where this piece is, as well as some other things that I'm going to talk about today. This piece is also on the RCM. It is on level 2 on the syllabus for RCM. And it's on the ISMTA if you're an Illinois teacher. It's on our AIM syllabus level 5. It's nice and short. It's very happy. It's a great choice for a student who wants to get their fingers to move fast and enjoy playing a very dance-like piece. At the end of this video, I'll put a full performance. But for right now, just so you know which piece we're talking about, it's this one. A shorter, easier piece, definitely one of the easiest things that we know that Beethoven composed. There are many tricky elements in here, and before you teach this, you need to make sure that your students are familiar with most of them. If you have one or two of these elements that your student hasn't encountered before, that's fine. This piece can be their introduction to it. But you want to make sure that most of the things involved in this piece they have experienced before, and that you have sufficiently prepared them for what they're going to have to do here. So let's take a quick look at what's in this piece. It's in the key of G major. That's great. That's an easy key to play in that most students will be familiar with, and many students at this point will know how to play a G major tonic chord. And hopefully you have introduced to them the root position, dominant 7th chord. What I like about this piece is that we get both the omission of the F sharp and the A, so students get to experience the 5-7 chord with taking out both of those notes. So this is without the F sharp, that happens in measure 2, or without the A, like in measure 3. They also experience a G sus chord in measure 4, which nicely resolves. Now, of course, in this piece, the left hand is not blocking the chords, but if you did, it might sound like this. And that might be a great first step in learning this piece, is knowing what those left-hand chords are in measures 1 through 8. As far as rhythm goes, we have 2/4 time, which is not complex, but we do have both 8th notes and 16th notes. I would not recommend this as a first piece for your student to do that includes 16th notes, partly because of the pickup or the upbeat at the very beginning. That could be quite confusing. So you want to make sure your students know how to count 16th notes, know how they work in a simple meter piece like this before you assign this piece. And then you'll want to go over with your student exactly what beat are we beginning on when we have that little pickup. We also have, in that right-hand part, a lot of really fun articulation, which is what gives this piece the dance-like feel. And editions do vary on exactly where they put the slurs. Perhaps Beethoven didn't write all of the 2-note slurs that are in this, but your students do need to know how to play a down-up 2-note slur gesture. They also need to be prepared to just bounce around, especially when they get to the interval of the 7th in the right hand, like measure 2, or the interval of the octave in the left hand. We're going to talk about that in a second. So the right hand with beautiful articulation should sound like this. reaching out for the interval of the 7th or holding that extended hand position. I really firmly believe in closing the hand, especially for something that's so energetic and bright like this. A lot of Bach also requires a closed hand. So you have to convince your student to do that leap of a seventh without holding an open hand position. You could even experiment with not using 5 on the top. So I'm doing 5, 3, 2, 1, 2, and you could jump to any finger, like 3. You can also go to 5. But if you want a nice strong accent on that syncopated note, you might want to go to something like 3. Same thing for the left hand. Your students who may not have played a lot of octaves will need to be convinced that they do not need to hold the blocked octave position to play measures 9 through 12. Instead, I want my students to learn a basic rotation technique with these bouncing octaves and be willing to just bounce around. Sometimes I have to say to my students, it's okay if you miss a note while you're practicing this. It doesn't have to be perfect, because I'd rather them really experience a nice, bouncy, relaxed technique than try to be 100% accurate in the learning process. Of course, those pitches make up a D major chord, and so it's really helpful for students to not try to be reading these notes as they are bouncing around, but just to know that they are outlining that D major chord or arpeggio, whatever way you want to think about it. The last important aspect of this piece, and what I think is the most fun about it, is that there is a syncopated rhythm. We already kind of highlighted that in measure 2 and measure 4, and that A sharp in measure 4 is the wrong sounding note. So your students get to kind of, poke at it and enjoy the dissonance there. But we get that syncopation again in measure 13 and 14. And it's really, really important that students be willing to bounce off of the downbeat and then have a nice, good arm weight drop into that quarter note on the and of 1. 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and. Now, one edition of this that I looked at did not have the slur from the quarter note to the 8th note, and that can be very difficult for younger students, and maybe not a goal that you want to spend a lot of lesson time on now. If you have a student who is ready for a good slur like that, then the way I would teach the right hand, for instance, in measure 14, would be to play the 6th, rotate up to the pinky, kind of have my thumb wave to the window over there, and then play 1 and 4, like that. That way you can get legato from finger 5 to finger 4, but you can train your student's hand to let go of the G so that they can replay it. And if you just practice that in slow motion a few times, kids usually get it. Playing it at a higher tempo is a different topic and a different issue. So if your student is not ready for that, but they're ready to play all the rest of this piece, I don't think it's a hill worth dying on. It is okay to play. The syncopation is still very obvious and very enjoyable that way. I hope this gave you a few things to think about. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and consider checking out my website. Teacher consultations and much more are there. Here is the performance of the Beethoven Écossaise in G major.